It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon in a small desert town. The sun beat down on the empty streets, and the only sound was the slow hum of cicadas. That's when she appeared, riding a dusty old bicycle with a worn-out basket tied to the front. She looked like any ordinary woman, maybe in her late 30s, wearing a long faded dress and a straw hat that had seen better days. To the outside eye, she was just a simple traveler, maybe lost or passing through. But something about her caught the attention of a nearby patrol unit. Without warning, 2 police cruisers pulled up beside her at the next intersection. The officers stepped out slowly, cautious but confused. One of them asked for her ID. She didn't resist, but the moment they glanced at the card, everything changed. Their posture stiffened, their voices turned quiet, almost nervous. One officer quickly radioed something in. No one knew what was said, but whatever it was, it set off a chain of events no one expected. Within minutes, the still air was shattered by the distant rumble of engines. Dust kicked up from the edge of town as over a dozen military Humvees rolled in, their tires grinding across the cracked pavement. People came out of shops and homes, staring in disbelief as the convoy stopped right beside the woman and the now stunned police officers. Then a tall man in full uniform stepped out of the lead vehicle. A captain, his badge catching the sunlight, walked straight toward her without saying a word. She looked up, met his eyes, and simply nodded. What happened next left the whole town speechless. But before anyone could understand what was going on, the captain gave a single command. And that's where everything took a wild turn. The captain's command was short, almost too quiet to hear, but the soldiers moved instantly. Some spread out in a perimeter, while others surrounded the woman and her bike. The townspeople stayed frozen where they stood, holding their breath, unsure if they were watching a rescue, an arrest, or something far stranger. The woman remained calm through it all, no fear. No panic, just stillness, like she had been. Through this before, the officers who first stopped her stepped back, looking completely out of the loop now. One of them whispered to the other, "What did that ID even say?" But no answer came. The captain didn't glance at them. His focus was only on the woman. She looked up at him again, and this time softly said, "I told you I wouldn't hide." He gave a small nod, not of agreement, but recognition, like he'd been searching for her for a long time. Whispers spread through the growing crowd. Who was she? Why did the military show up for someone on a bicycle with no belongings? Some thought she might be a high-value witness or someone who knew too much. Others guessed she was connected to something classified, maybe even dangerous. No one knew for sure, and that only made the tension worse. Then one of the soldiers carefully opened a black case from the back of a Humvee. Inside, it was something wrapped in cloth-heavy metal and shaped unlike anything people could recognize. The woman saw it and looked away, suddenly distant, like a painful memory had returned. Whatever that object was, it clearly meant something. The captain reached into the case, and before anyone could react, he held it up not to threaten, but to show her. Her reaction was instant. Her hands trembled slightly, and she stepped back, whispering a single word that no one around could understand. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted again, more uncertain than ever. The air around them felt heavier now. People didn't know whether to stay or run. Phones were out, recording, but no one dared speak above a whisper. The captain lowered the object slowly, wrapping it back in the cloth like it was sacred or dangerous, or maybe both. The woman, still pale from whatever she had seen, stared at the ground like she was trying to keep herself from crumbling. From behind the Humvees, a second vehicle arrived, sleek, black, and unlike the others. 2 men stepped out in plain suits, clearly not military. One had a tablet in hand. The other scanned the crowd like he was searching for potential threats. They spoke to the captain briefly, but the conversation was tense, filled with short glances toward the woman. when one of the men tried to approach her. The captain stepped in front of him and said firmly, "She's under my protection now." That sparked more confusion. Who were these men? Some of the townsfolk whispered about federal agents. Others guessed intelligence officers. Whatever the truth was, this was no longer just a roadside stop. It was turning into something far bigger. And the woman, despite her simple look, was clearly someone important, maybe even dangerous, depending on who you believed. Meanwhile, at the diner across the street, an old man named Roy sat watching from his window seat. He didn't record anything. He just stared, shaking his head slowly. "I knew this day would come," he muttered to himself. The waitress, confused, asked what he meant. Roy didn't answer directly. He just said, "She's not who people think she is." And that thing they showed her. I saw it once. Decades ago, buried in a place we were told never to speak of again. Back outside, the woman raised her head, eyes locked with Roy through the glass. Her expression shifted not surprise, but recognition. Whatever secrets were buried before were starting to rise. The woman didn't break eye contact with Roy. For a split second, everything else seemed to fade: the soldiers, the Humvees, the silent crowd. Roy stood up slowly from his booth, his hands slightly shaking as he reached for the old leather bag he always carried. The waitress tried to stop him, asking if he was all right, but he just gave her a soft look and said, "It's time." Outside, the suited men were growing impatient. One of them tapped on his tablet rapidly, then said something sharp into a hidden earpiece. Moments later, a low hum filled the air. From beyond the ridge behind the town, a sleek black drone appeared, circling above. The captain looked up, clearly not expecting that. He muttered a curse under his breath and barked out orders to his team. The soldiers immediately repositioned, now treating the sky like a threat. The woman backed away from the center of the road, moving slowly toward the diner as if drawn there. The tension rose with every step. She passed her bike without looking at it. People noticed something strange. Then beneath the basket on her bike, tucked in a hidden compartment, was a piece of metal that glowed faintly, pulsing like it was alive. The agent with the tablet spotted it too and pointed. "There," he shouted, and several soldiers moved toward the bike. But the captain hesitated. "Stand down," he ordered. The agents didn't listen. They pushed forward anyway. Roy stepped out of the diner just then, holding the leather bag tight to his chest. He walked toward the woman, nodding as if he finally understood. The glow from the bike intensified. The crowd stepped back, unsure if they were about to witness history or disaster. Suddenly, the drone stopped midair. Frozen, not by any signal or system, but something else. Something coming from the woman. She looked at Roy and whispered, "It's waking up." And just like that, the ground beneath their feet started to vibrate. The vibration underfoot grew stronger, making windows rattle and car alarms wail in. The distance, dust, and tiny rocks started to lift off the ground, hovering as if gravity itself had begun to shift. People screamed and backed away, some dropping their phones, others frozen in place, unable to look away from the strange glow pulsing from the woman's bike. Roy clutched his bag tighter, stepping in front of the woman protectively. The captain shouted into his radio, trying to get control of the situation, but his voice was lost in the rising hum. The suited agents backed off, finally realizing they had underestimated what they were dealing with. One of them yelled, "She's triggering it early. This wasn't supposed to happen here." The other snapped, "We have to contain it before the window closes." But no one had answers, not even the woman. She looked shaken now, her calm slipping as something in her changed. Her eyes, once quiet and tired, were now wide, flickering with something unnatural-like, a memory rushing in too fast. She turned to Roy and said, "It wasn't supposed to find me yet. We're not ready." Then, without warning, The ground behind the town cracked, not like an earthquake, but something controlled measured. A wide, straight line split open behind the diner, revealing a long metallic surface buried deep beneath the desert. It wasn't a natural fault line. It was a door. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The agents panicked. "It's here," one of them said under his breath. "The vault." The captain's face went pale. That vault was sealed 50 years ago. How's it opening now? Before anyone could answer, the bike's hidden device pulsed one last time, then shattered, sending a wave of energy that knocked the front row of soldiers to the ground. From the open crack in the earth, something began to rise. Not a machine, not a weapon. A figure, wrapped in shadow, watching them, waiting. The figure rose slowly, silent but heavy with presence. Everyone instinctively backed away as it stepped from the vault, tall and cloaked in layers that seemed to shift like smoke. Its face was hidden, but a faint blue glow burned where its eyes should have been. The air felt cold now, unnaturally cold, and the sky had dulled, like something was draining the light itself. The woman's voice cut through the silence. "I thought it was gone, after the program shut down. After they buried it," she stepped forward, trembling but firm. "But they didn't destroy it. They sealed it, waiting for me to lead it back." The captain looked stunned. "You were the failsafe," he said softly. "They designed it to find you, if it ever woke up." The agents looked between each other, now completely out of control. One of them finally admitted it was part of a Cold War project. Something they found in deep orbit, covered, not built. She was part of the connection experiment. She's the last one. The figure took another step. It stopped in front of the woman. And then, to everyone's shock, it bowed its head slightly like it was waiting for her command. Roy dropped his bag, revealing what was inside. A journal full of old notes, sketches, and codes. "This thing, it's not here to destroy," he said, flipping through pages. "It's here to judge, and she's the voice it listens to." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes now. "But I left for a reason. I didn't want this power. I didn't want to choose." She looked at the crowd, the soldiers, even the agents, then back at the figure. "But if I don't, someone else will." She took a deep breath, raised her hand. The figure lifted its head, and just when it seemed she would command it, she turned and pointed to someone behind her. Everyone spun around. It wasn't Roy. It wasn't the captain. It was the waitress, quiet, unnoticed, now staring back in. Shock as the blue glow reflected in her eyes. The figure began to move again, but this time toward her. The waitress stood frozen, her apron still dusted with flour from the morning shift. Her hands shook as the glowing figure approached, its every step measured and deliberate. The woman with the bike slowly lowered her. Eyes locked on the young girl. "It was never supposed to be me," she whispered. "I was just the bridge, the signal. But she's the one it's been waiting for." The realization settled over the crowd like fog. The waitress, barely in her 20s, had lived in that town her whole life, quiet, unnoticed, with no idea of what lay hidden beneath her feet. But the figure recognized something deep inside her, something even she didn't understand yet. As it stood before her, it didn't threaten or speak. It simply extended a hand. She hesitated, then slowly reached out. The moment their fingers touched, a soft light pulsed outward, warm and calm. The ground stilled. The sky cleared. The hidden vault behind them sealed shut once more with a low hum. As if the earth itself sighed in relief, the soldiers lowered their weapons. The agents, speechless, could only watch. The woman stepped back, finally letting go of the burden she'd carried for years. Roy, still holding the journal, closed it gently. "Sometimes," he said, "the future doesn't come from those who've been chosen, but those who never expected to be. The waitress looked around, her eyes still faintly glowing, but peaceful. The figure beside her faded slowly into light, dissolving into the air like mist in morning sun. The town would never forget what they saw that day. But life, as it always does, eventually returned to normal, except now, somewhere out there. A girl who once poured coffee for truckers carried something ancient and powerful within her, and the world had no idea what was coming next.